We got a couple things to take care of this morning. First of all is your regular financial report. I believe it's on page 5 and 6. No, page 5. We're running in accordance with the annual budget. We have a few small items that are over 55%, but they're the minor parts and we know what's there. So funding's in line. We've only got 25% from the county, but I asked Tammy a minute ago, and that's because we haven't requested the other funding yet, and that's usually comes right away, so we're in good shape there. We still have $24,000 in our reserve account available there from operating so far this year. We've got funding we had going in, but that's where we are at this point in time, so need some action on that, and then I'll move on with the other point.
Is there a motion to approve the financial report? And a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Page 6, the following page. Those of you new to the board may not realize, but we've got to have our budget request in very, very early during the year because we've got to have time for the cities and the counties to approve those. So this is the time of year we approve our 15-16 budget. Executive Committee is recommending this budget. We're staying status quo at a total funding of $386,331.91. We have reallocated a couple items in the budget. Last year we had a $20,000 line item for professional recruitment initiative. This year we're moving those funds primarily back up into the marketing budget. We're waiting on the results of that initiative to see how it did before we come back and ask for future funding. If you look down under personnel, point out one point, and that's assistant director. Executive Committee is proposing a raise there. Her duties have grown quite a bit, and also she's been very attractive to some other people in the community, and we've worked on an increase there to entice her to stay with us with her experience instead of having some turnover there. So that's what the Executive Committee recommends. That's your budget. We'll be submitting this to the county and Mount Juliet, Lebanon, and Watertown in the coming months.
We need a motion from this board to send that forward. Do I hear that from anybody? I got a motion from Mr. Bryan. Do I have a second? Anywhere. I got a second. Any other discussion? Anybody? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? I guess, Speaker, we're going to move that to the end to give him as much time as he needs to present his program, and so now we'll move.
Mayor, let me point out one more thing.
Sorry.
Just for your own edification, on page 7, we have a breakdown of the way the funding is throughout the county and the cities based on population percentage. So page 7 contains the population that we have on the latest 2010 census and the breakdown as to how this budget will be funded. And also at the very back, or probably about 5 pages from the back of the report, there's a sales tax report of what we've collected county-wide. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Smart? And now we'll move forward, as we said before, the guest speakers go last. We will now elect position number 17, currently held by Mr. Nelson Steed, as a private sector member of this board. Do I hear a nomination for this seat?
Nominate Mr. Steve to take it again.
Second.
Not here to defend himself, so I'm thinking he's going to be in good shape. Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Elections of officers. Now, as you see on your sheet, you have Chairman Nelson Steed, Vice Chairman Don Chambers, Secretary Ms. Tammy Stokes, Treasurer Mr. Phil Smart, and Mr. Attorney Senator Rochelle. So, what is the pleasure of the board for these officers? We can do them individually, or we can name them all back again, whatever your pleasure. All right, Craig Head makes a motion to accept them all as they are. Do I have a second? Keith Martin seconds that. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll name them all back again. We thank all of you for serving again for us. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Executive Director report, G.C. Hickson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for being here again this morning. Thomas McDaniel is dropping his children off in Franklin and is on his way here, so we'll go ahead and do the report and let him have as much time as he can. I will let you know this is a live feed today as opposed to a tape, so I'm sure you appreciate what we say or don't say. Melanie, I appreciate, congratulations on getting your appointment, looking forward to it. And we're looking forward to working our continued work just as we did with Sue. And Sue, welcome back. Bobby, I think this is y'all's second meeting here today on your appointment. Also, Luke Winchester, I think, was reappointed by Mayor Haggerty, and also Caleb Thorne reappointed by Mayor Hutto and the County Commission. We appreciate y'all doing that. The report today covers the period in the second quarter of 2014-2015. That's October, December of 2014. I think we're all aware of some of the announcements. 2014 calendar year was a very good year for us. We will be working on the annual report. That comes around way too soon, but I think you're going to see some really good numbers along those lines. But I think we understand Under Armour's announcement in October, the Federal Express announcement followed that. Not an announcement, but certainly they're on the ground working. A couple other things that went on during this period. After 9 years, we have an industry in Watertown, and that is Dysol. They are a company in the plasma business. They're taking one of the 50,000 square foot buildings there, redoing that. A woman-owned business from California, so we're looking forward for that to take place. SureCan took a facility here in Lebanon, 100,000 square foot building. They're going to be making sort of a unique gas can, and they're in on the ground and then hiring some folks. And one other announcement, Hamanonics, that's about as close as I can get, but they're down at Capsule Pike in about 200,000 square feet. And they're also in the platelets blood, and they supply 7,000 different hospitals and medical facilities across the United States. So those are some of the things that went on in the last quarter. Sort of a diverse group, some manufacturing, certainly a lot of logistics things, and that being said, even though there are announcements made, those folks in the city of Mount Gilead certainly realize that's just sort of when work begins in Under Armour. So there's things that goes on. The State Industrial Access Grant, the 4-Lake Grant application, or Tennessee Central that we refer to now that we'll talk about. There's all type of activities going on with the Mount Gilead Development Board and their grants. So if you do drive by that facility, you can see it's been lowered. It is it's a transformation there in a short period of time. I think you're still looking for them to be in partial part of their building by May or June. That building should be completely up in October, November. And that's 1 million square feet since October. That's a pretty aggressive campaign that's happened. Certainly would not be done without what's going on with the good leadership in Mount Gilead. One of the things we did do over the period was we did pass a pilot for the Federal Express project. There were some discussions and with the budget committee on the program. We held a work session here in this room with the budget committee to try to do a better job of explaining the program, how we come up with our recommendations, how they're involved in that. I think it was a good meeting. We continue to, I think we have to do a better job when we make our packages, and we'll do that. Certainly, I think the budget folks have a better understanding. Since that time, they have approved 2 different pilot agreements. One is a Project Addiction, which is a major distribution company here in Lebanon that's expanding their facility 200,000 square feet and adding about 48 folks. The big investment in that is about $29 million as they clean out all their racking and inventory, and in a transitional, they haven't done that since they've been here in the late 90s. So we help them do that. Again, if you have conversations with the Wilson County Commission members. If you have conversations with the Budget Committee, these things are competitive, and we encourage you to, if you have questions about it, see us, but it is a program that I think returns some good things. But they approved the addiction project. They also approved a project that's looking at a facility in Mount Juliet, that's called Plant 9, that is the Campbell Hospital building there. So we're moving forward with that. One of the things we talked about the Budget Committee with is that we're in a position that, you know, eventually, once you get to a building or site, it's always, well, what's possible? And that's why the program is designed that way. We do have 3 proposals out, and sort of the indication of what's going on out there in our projects. One is another million square foot distribution project, which is about 600 employees. Another one is a manufacturer, automotive tier 1 supplier, with 240 employees. And another one's a food processing company that, so I think we're trending along those lines. Manufacturing is good. The logistics folks will continue to do it. Greg, something you need to sit down. We'll be in just a minute. Thank you. One of the other things we're doing, so that's sort of the trends. We're moving into what I think more manufacturing projects now than what we had last year. I think that's going to continue. We met with a Chicago developer who's assembled about 150 acres and in the Mount Juliet area. We're moving forward with that as we bring more products on the market. So those are some of the major activities that took place in those 3 months. Sort of on the administrative side, we went underneath the LEAP program, which was a state program that worked with the Department of Education, tried to get some funding for our technology center. We were not successful in that, but we'll talk about the technology center here in a little bit. We continue to try to do some things to I think, announce what we do here. So we do some news articles. We did one on Perma-Pipe expansion. Maikawa here, Japanese company that makes high pressure vessels, expansion project. And we do some news articles just sort of say what this agency does and what type of good things are happening in the county. We continue to coordinate the Industrial Bond Board work and the approval of the pilots. We also work with the Health and Facilities Board. Probably had 3 or 4 of those meetings in that last quarter. Appreciate Mr. Rochelle and what he does along those lines. We helped SMX do 4 different jobs fair, and SMX is the leading company for Amazon, because they went through about 1,500 to 1,800 employees in their rush period. So you have about 650 folks working there full time, and you have that number of folks that went through in a 4-month period. The newsletter we did, Tammy continues to post things on the media activities on the web page. Also, as you saw, if you're not on the state ECD mailing list, ECD, we help coordinate a taping of the operations out at Per Mobile. And they're attempting, we had the commissioner down here, former commissioner, he was just sort of, overtaken by what they do there, and they're trying to make that one of Tennessee's brands. So we can talk about Jack Daniels, Federal Express, and HCA, and different brands of the state. They want to start including that in their marketing. So just a good thing. Developed 15-16 budget for consideration. After many years, we actually replaced the telephone system here. We're still learning. So if you get cut off, it's probably our fault. It's a fallback. Some know it better than others, and I'm sort of on the back end of that whole process. So, but we did donate the old system to a nonprofit group. Amy, you remember? I don't right now. So we just didn't, throw it out the door so they get to use it. One of the things, because it was the season, we designed and sent our packages to location consultants, real estate folks, people we work with year, we used the Tennessee Cheesecake out of Mount Juliet. We also used Visionary Design Group. You have the puzzle that was part of our package that we sent out, and Tammy, you have to help me, how many we do? 57. That's why she's here to remember the numbers. Good response for that. Two great, Wilson County projects. Tammy also assisted Mayor Hutto and his search group on the replacement of Rachel, which is probably one of the tougher jobs you could ever undertake. But we did give up some time there. As far as projects, our office responded to 26 different RFPs in this 3-month period, which is pretty good for the end of the year. We continue to work with companies that want to have high-density apartments, livability, those things, also senior living. You don't think that, maybe we do a lot of that, and that's because we don't talk a lot about it, but we will. A couple of major projects that we worked on. You have a listing of the projects there, but I think what I want to do is just sort of talk about the ones that you'll probably be hearing about. Addiction was that 200,000 square foot expansion in one of our companies here. With the commission and budget committee approving the pilot, I think you'll see an announcement on that within the next couple of weeks. Project Papa is a company in Middle Tennessee that's consolidating their operations into about 500,000 square feet of warehousing, and they'll add 200,000 square feet of stamping and manufacturing. We're down to 1 or 2 sites, one in Murfreesboro, one here on that project. Java is a tier 1 automotive, again, a tier 1 stamping, assembly, plating operation. They are under contract with a building on Eastgate, or they have 2 built to suit numbers coming back from them. Again, that's 11th project. Measure is actually KHS Music. I can tell you that. What they're doing is bringing in 2 additional lines that they bought. They do the band instruments, things of that nature, but they also bought a company that does harmonics. I don't know if you know them or not, but they're adding 30 or 40 folks over the next year to 18 months as they bring in that line. So they do own their building down on Eastgate. It's the one right before the Under Armour. And Project Shine, we talked about, that is, I tell you, that sure can into a building on Eastgate Boulevard. Plan 9, the County Commission Budget Office approved the budget on a pilot on that. We approved 2 sites, one in Illinois and one on this. They are a company that supplies Nissan, but they're in Nissan already on their inside their operation. They have more work, just can't do it inside the walls of Nissan, so they are really considering us. The other 2 alleys, that million square foot operation that's floating around, and then Elk is another consolidation of manufacturing lines for a major company that's looking at building down in Eastgate. They have not done any pilot. We've only met with them, but they're moving forward. I hate that we can't, describe the company's names and everything. We're under, we signed the confidentiality statements. We'll try to do as much as we can as soon as we can. But I think our pipeline is good for this time of year. The economy is good. Certainly, state government, conservative roads, keeps paying him low income tax, no income tax. Those things are, when we get to talk to the folks, those are the reasons that we're getting those looks. And certainly, again, I'll just end by saying I appreciate the budget committee, I appreciate Mayor Hutto, what you did in putting these meetings together, and I think we're going to have a better working relationship and understanding. Mayor, that is where we are in activities and projects. As we continue to move forward, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer those. We'll go ahead and we have one new business at the end of the day that we can take care of. I've asked Thomas McDaniel to come speak with us today. We've known each other for many years back at the state. I won't try to go through the history of Boyle, but it is long and distinguished out of Memphis. Certainly a major player in the professional area and white-collar development, which is what we want to start looking at. They have investments in Mount Juliet at this time. So what he wants to do is sort of go through a presentation and then just give us an opportunity to ask some questions. And as Phil said, you know, we're working on sort of an initial white-collar initiative. Thomas, I'll be coming back to you and have our folks talk to you at that time. But we appreciate you being here. I know you dropped your kids off and been running to get here, and we appreciate you being here today. Thank you. Good morning. Let's see. I'll get it. Let's set you up. Good morning. No speeding tickets?
No speeding tickets. It's always tight. Eat your Cheerios. We gotta go. We gotta go. I gotta.
No, it should be in the back.
That's exactly.
That's a Chesapeake Bay retriever. They don't even have a chance. It's a 6-year-old. That remains to be seen. They're in their backyard fence stand. The boys think that he's going to come in the house.
All right.
Last long as he gets.
Sorry for the technological learning curve. That was quick though, actually. But you know, I think GC asked me to come speak about some of what we're doing on the office side and what what some of the latest evolution of office development is that's out there. I know that to garner office development here and eventually Class A executive office space is the goal. And so how do we get there, and what pieces are needed to put in place, and then what does that look like today? So I was going to start by just walking y'all through a couple of our current projects that are reflective of different types of trends and maybe kind of that evolution a little bit over time, how things have gone. And to me, this is not really a one-way speech. I hope it can be more of a discussion, and anything y'all want to talk about, please feel free. Make sure I can do this. Okay. So this is a good aerial because it exhibits a couple things. This is the intersection of Cool Springs Boulevard, kind of running across the screen, and then I-65. So this is the epicenter of Cool Springs. And this slide in itself, although I wish it went just a touch more above, it doesn't. I don't want to mess this up either, afraid to touch it. This depicts the evolution in itself of an office market, and of a market that started out with nothing more than an interchange and cow pastures. What kicked off Cool Springs, other than the mall, and if you were, you could compare the mall to, say, another major retail anchor center, Providence, for example. You got an interchange and you got a retail center. You also have homes. You have housing options. So what came next? In Cool Springs, what came next was, the hardest thing to attract first is the executive office, the decision makers. They're usually a follower. You're often not going to find the headquarters of Jackson National Life plopped down in the middle of, no other context. So what's the user that moves first? Typically the user that moves first is the user focused on cost or density. And then we've seen it time and time again, over and over, if we start getting those are an office precedent setter. And so then you have a little more office. And with a little more office, there are a few more managers, a few more decision makers. Then you got more houses that come in next door. And then you got more lunch places to feed all those off. And then the office eventually evolves, and you've seen it over and over again. And so here at this intersection, for example, you started out with, and this exhibits a couple trends. It exhibits not only the evolution of a market to a different type of office, but also it also represents an evolution of design trends in our business. So the first building built in Cool Springs, there are actually two of them. One was this building here, which was called One Corporate Center. We now own it. We call it One Meridian. We've integrated into our Meridian development. But nevertheless, One Corporate Center at the time was built in 1997, and Cigna was the anchor tenant for that. Back office, it was built to really more than 5 per thousand, more like 6 per thousand parking. Right about the same time, and again, the mall existed. You see right here, this double road is kind of the corner of that ring road that surrounds Cool Springs Gallery. So the mall was there. Cigna came into this building, and then right off the screen here is what was then known as the Primus headquarters, Ford Motor Credit. And all of this land that you see here is our Meridian development that we've built. At the time, all of that land, 44 acres, was intended to be phase 2 of Primus. The city of Franklin attracted Primus by basically giving them their land for free. And so Ford came in and built a 500,000 foot building. They occupied the whole thing. They gave them 80 acres. This 40 was intended to be Primus Phase 2. Phase 2 never happened. And long story short, they ended up selling it to us one day, and we turned it into something else. As an aside, the city maybe should have put some strings on that. When they gave the land, I'm sure later they wish they had put some strings and said, if you don't use it now, you got to give it back to us. You can't just sell it. But nevertheless, that's what kicked all this off, was one corporate center and Primus, and that was Primus also was back office. It was built to 5 per 1,000. But once we got those, then we got 2 corporate center. 2 corporate center was built for multi-tenant. From a multi-tenant standpoint, it did not have a dominant anchor tenant. Cigna had 100,000 feet of this 130,000 foot building. So basically, it was all built for them with a little bit of multi-tenant space. But then that started to set a precedent. So you got 2 strong anchors, and they were focused on, customer service centers, high parking, low cost. But what then followed was the amenities, and what then followed was more houses nearby. And so then what followed was building 2, which is a little bit of a higher evolution of decision-maker oriented office. Then you kind of get all of these, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you start to see an even higher evolution. Some of this was architectural, though. We did this Meridian development, and you'll notice the nature of these is kind of what, this was the 60-year period of design that followed World War II, where everything was kind of split up, and offices over here, and houses are over here, and retail's over there, and nobody wants to be next to each other, and everything's built around kind of a cul-de-sac of office, and then when you need to go to lunch, you need to get in your car and drive across the interstate to lunch, and then come back, and then when it's time to go home, you get in your car and you drive down here, and you drive back in the morning. Well, kind of the next evolution of design that I was speaking to is that things are starting to mix now. People want more proximate amenities that they can walk to. Now, areas like Cool Springs and Brentwood particularly aren't yet ready to mix residential with commercial. So at least we're mixing commercial with commercial right now. And so here at Meridian, what we did was to mix office space with hotels and retail space, everything but residential in a walkable format. And so, these are just some inspiration images of different things that come with being able to mix uses. I didn't include a before picture, a picture that would just be a standalone building with a parking lot, but I think we're all familiar with those. This is what commercial space can be. This comes with density, and it comes with mixture of uses, and sometimes that is a little unnerving, especially from a zoning standpoint. There's always a fear of, well, what could this become? And there is certainly a bad side of the what can it become, but there's also a really good side, and so this is some of the inspiration images. So I'll just show you a couple other things. So like this is Meridian. This is really an office development at the end of the day. It looks very different. When you think of an office development, like I say, you think of the building and just the parking lot, kind of the fried egg that it looks like from the air. This is still an office development, but it's dressed up with 70,000 feet of retail amenity space, and then we've got 2 hotels here, and it's all walkable. All the buildings are pushed up to the street, and the parking is hidden behind. So the pedestrian experience is friendly, and you want to walk down these buildings because you're not walking and there's a cut through for cars, and you're about to get hit, and there's cars here and there's cars there parked or moving. Rather, the pedestrian is protected, and all the cars are hidden behind, and it's still quick to get in and out. One of the things our competitors tried to sell against us when we started this was that it was going to be a cluster. You don't want to go to that mixed use over there. Look how quickly you can pull right into our parking lot and park. And, you can. And it was really focused on the car, but there was no satisfaction for the user once you parked for the rest of your office day. And so, with that said, it was really important for us to make sure it was not a cluster, and that the car still could get in and out quickly enough. And if designed right, it can work. So that was our Meridian development at Cool Springs, and I'm just showing you kind of a couple of hypothetical different types of projects, but this is where everything is going, at least for us, and we think this is where the market is going. This is our City Park development in Brentwood that this used to be called Synergy Park, or at the very beginning it was called the Koger Center. It was one of the first things built in Brentwood, and it was built when, again, office is over here, and and, you know, retail's over here, and it's all about the you know, you park, you work, you go get back in your car to go do anything else, like go get a sandwich or whatever. So, you'll see here the site plans, all of these, so this is Franklin Road, right down the middle of Brentwood. I-65 is right here. And so, if you can envision the before shot of this, I didn't overwhelm you all with slides, but the before shot is if you can just imagine these light yellow colored buildings, and that's it. It was just an office development with a bunch of office parcels. And so what we've come in and done is right up the middle of the development. And you know, there were some trees and there was some grass there, and so it was a little unsettling at first. But all in the name of progress, and the trees will grow back. We'll plant a lot of trees back, but all this red is retail and amenity space, and it's walkable. And this is a new park, an urban park, right in the middle of Brentwood, a 1-acre park. There's a historic home right here that we preserved, and we have we've done we've got a hotel development going here that will actually be designed to mimic the historic house and owned the development, and they had this house they were stuck with. Was how they looked at it. So the house deteriorates because no one's using it, and you know, if there's no life, if there's no economic life or social life to something like decided that we could finally find an economic purpose for that house, and the house kind of serves as the visual focal point of the hotel. So that's great. So now it'll have a life, and it'll be maintained. It'll be great. And it's going to be the visual terminus of this entry with a park, and so we'll have all this walkable retail. So, so we're basically retrofitting all that into the existing park. So those, the red brick buildings and this terrible ugly building here, and you know, some of these, those were all the pre-existing office buildings, and that was the old design mentality. And so the new design mentality is walkability, density, friendly to a pedestrian. You still have all your parking. You know, if you count it up, there's plenty of parking. But now it's hidden. And when you pull in, you can pull in and go park right there, or pull here and park right there. But once you get out of your car, you can walk to this, work, come here and have lunch. You can have clients stay in that hotel. You know, people who are in town to visit you as a business can take the airport shuttle Monday morning, get in the hotel, not have to rent a car, and then just take the airport shuttle back Wednesday evening to the airport. So these are all retail buildings here. They're almost finished now. This is this new park. Here's the historic house, the hotel wrapping around it. So we can't say that this is perfect. It would have been a lot easier if we had a blank slate to work with. But retrofitting something into what was there can still work, at least to an acceptable degree. So that's an example of a retrofit that still tries to accomplish the same goals. This is a closer up version of that park and the house in the back. These are some of our, these are images from some of the projects that I've just been talking about, actual images at those projects. The last one I wanted to show you is more ambitious density-wise, but it's still based on the same concept. And this is our Capitol View development that we're working on, kind of on the fringe of downtown right now. This was an old blighted area at the intersection of I-40 and Charlotte Pike. There's a lot of stuff going on in Charlotte Pike, major kind of western corridor for downtown. You see the CBD right here. This whole area was a bunch of just terrible buildings, and you know, there was a swingers club and a paint store and just anything and everything. So this was an assemblage that took a lot of time. It's now demolished, and so this is our land plan. You all may have heard HCA has come in. They have bought 2 of these. These are basically each a city block. This is 32 acres, basically right on the edge of downtown. You know, we're very excited. How often do you find that? So HCA has come in and we're very excited. We initially were not intending to sell anything, but to get a major anchor tenant like that, whether it's for a new suburban submarket or something in the city, that is an irreplaceable commodity. But they only wanted to own. They have been burned by dealing with real estate developers in the past. They don't trust anybody. Who can blame them? So they said, we'll participate, but we're only going to do it if we own it. So they've purchased these 2 blocks. In this first block, they're going to put a 500,000-foot office building and conference center for their people. And then they'll hold this and be able to develop something similar behind it. No matter what project we're doing, have an anchor like that kick it off, like I say, is irreplaceable. And so for us, we'll come in and build. This is grocery and retail on the ground floor with residential above it, parking garage in the middle. Similar here, except for this is office, parking garage, hotel, residential. Sometimes it's hard to even get your mind around, some of these vertical wrapped city block things that it's almost like a Tetris or jigsaw puzzle the way they fit together. But the closer you get to in town, the more dense things are going. But it's all still based on the same precept. That precept of people wanting more amenities wherever they are, and they want more connectivity, and they want to be able to walk down the street and see other people instead of just driving stoplight to stoplight. And I guess you see some other people behind their steering wheels, but that's about it. And that translates to the most dense and suburban just alike. So the building on the top right is HCA's building. This is what the streetscape will look like when you pull right into the campus. This is a grocery store, 2-story grocery store, you can imagine. And that is looking back at HCA there. Oh, I forgot I had this in there. Berry Farms. So this is, if you go, I've gone into urban and now I'm back the most suburban again. Berry Farms is further out from the CBD than we are sitting right here. Berry Farms is down I-65. It's the last exit you get to before 840. Even though that's right before 840, I still think, as the crow flies, this is further out. Yet, we've got 600 and something acres, and the absorption, we're early in this development. This is the interstate interchange, and we have 3 of these 4 quadrants. And the highlighted tracks here show the active commercial sites right now. So it's still early. If you drive out there, a lot of this still looks like cow pasture. But even the things that have, we've got a 500,000-foot corporate campus that's under contract to purchase this site and build these buildings here at the total tail end of the development. This is a user moving from Cool Springs, Class A user. Large retail center, apartment deal. All of this is office. This is another office user. We're getting a lot of looks from people who are in Brentwood and Cool Springs now who want to move further down the interstate. Why do they want to do that? Because of, on cost, we can beat what Brentwood and Cool Springs can do. That said, though, land cost differential, it's a drop in the ocean of your total development cost budget. And so there's got to be more. We can offer, one of the things we can offer is more density because of greater flexibility of sites. And we can also offer, and we're doing this especially to get things going, we can offer a user the ability to purchase and own a site. We'll either develop the building for them and sell it to them at the end, or they can do like this headquarters down here, they're going to do a land purchase and then build their own buildings or hire a fee developer to do it. And because an area like Cool Springs, for example, or Brentwood, is controlled by a few large institutional owners, if you want to go buy the land for a 125,000-foot building that maybe your company is going to occupy, you just can't find that land. It doesn't exist. You can't shake loose 6 acres of office zone land that you can purchase. I wish I had a nickel for all the people who have come saying, I might be interested in a lease, but really I'd like to own. I'm throwing my money away. I'd love to own something for our office. I said, well, take a number, get in line, because because it just doesn't exist. And so that's one of the other things, flexibility-wise, that we've been able to compete with at Berry Farms. Once we get the snowball rolling downhill, we'll probably stop selling things and retain everything and build buildings for users and lease them out, and then that'll be more like what Cool Springs is today, where you basically can't buy anything anymore. But anyway, this is a suburban but still walkable mixed-use development. All those inspiration images you've seen could just as easily fit here. This is all residential. It starts from kind of townhouses and gradually undensifies to estate lots here. This is a walkable main street. Envision, downtown Franklin. These are your larger, more big box users, which you still have to have, and so you have to have a place for them in these developments. So this is a grocery store. We're very close to signing that lease. It'll bring a whole group of people with it. This is a downtown commercial district with restaurants overlooking a water feature. And these are areas for hotels and things like that. All the blue is office. So this is this quadrant here. So in a dense format or a not dense format, to us it's still walkability, it's a mixture of uses. You've got to have things other than office in order to attract the office. And lastly, this is our first foray in Wilson County. This is, we developed this public center on Mount Juliet Road several years back. We still have a junior anchor lease that's been built, and then we have this land for phase 2 here. About to get Starbucks in over there, which is always the thing people are more excited about than anything else we do. Interestingly, the land where this public center is, we originally put under contract, can't remember exactly when at this point, but it was probably 2006-ish. We put it under contract because we were looking for sites for Cigna at the time. Cigna had a requirement out where they were looking for 300,000 feet of office, I think, something in that range, for a back office center, which would have been very similar to the Cigna building. It was one of the things that kicked off Cool Springs in the day. It ended up that Cigna kind of flaked out, but while we had it under contract, we were still very excited about Mount Juliet and that piece of property and its proximity to Providence, and so we tried to find other users that may be interested, and Publix raised their hand. But one of the things that attracted us most to that was the fact that Providence was already there, and all the great things that have been done there would be a great starting point to get an office user interested. There were a couple things that weren't perfect about it for an office user, and so I think it still could have worked though, but at the time Publix raised their hand faster and higher and more aggressively, and so it ended up being a Publix. But we're interested in doing office development here in Wilson County. We got to have the right combination of ingredients, and the timing's got to be right, and there's public stuff and road stuff involved and all that, but we're interested when the time is right. So anyway, I feel like I've just been yapping, but
Questions for Thomas? Next 10 minutes or so?
Earlier, a couple of slides ago, you mentioned retail on the bottom and residential on the top. Tell me, what's that residential? Is that 2 floors of individual units, 2 floors of, like upstairs, downstairs condos? What's that look like?
let's see if I have any good images.
Not even really a picture, just what do you?
Don't have any good images here, but so like at Berry Farms, for example, kind of on this walkable main street here, all these brown buildings are lower floor retail, restaurants, whatever, shops, and then above that is 1 to 3 stories of residential, multifamily, either rental or condos. We would like to be able to design things like that it wouldn't matter if they're rental or condos, that it would work either way, which enables us to try to have as much flexibility as we can in these developments, because you never know at what point in the economic cycle you're hitting. You might be hitting in the point where everybody wants a rental, might be hitting in the point where everybody wants to buy something because of interest rates or whatever else. So yeah, that would be we've kind of got from the center core of these to the outermost parts, it will undensify. So right up here on the main street, you know, if you envision downstairs restaurant retail and say 2 to 3 stories of upper floor residential, as you step back, all of these are more stacked, flat apartments without the ground floor retail, except for perhaps on the corners. You know, something kind of right at an intersection or corner. There might still be retail, or there might be a pool house or a clubhouse. So as you step away, the mixture of uses becomes less dense and less mixed and a little more spaced out. And it's only kind of right here at your core where you want to have your center of activity and energy and the most people. At the end of the day, you know, the funny thing is people are scared of density. But in order to create an area that has energy, just envision like a long kind of city park area. You've got to have people. If there's no people, the restaurants won't be there. There's no interest because you go to this big lawn and there's no one there. Whereas if you envision like City Park with a bunch of people running around and playing football and dogs running, suddenly it's an interesting place and that attracts more people. So it's not to say you want all kinds of density everywhere, but you've got to be able to have a core area that maybe has some density, and maybe that's the draw, and then things breathe a little bit as you move back from that. There's got to be something that's the focal point, though.
I heard you make a comment earlier about the mixed zoning, and you said that you made a comment that some governments are afraid of that because of what you might get. And you all successfully did it a different way. So talk to me about what that zoning specification is.
There's a, you know, there was a headline just yesterday that Brentwood has stepped back from any residential at all within its commercial districts. And, you know, it's hard to analyze Brentwood. Brentwood is kind of its own place. And I think that's part of what they hang their hat on, is to say, this is all great, we see what you're doing, but we are 1 acre lot, put up a fence, and, you know, don't come in here. And there's a place for that, but I don't think Brentwood is ever going to evolve. And I think for the people who live in Brentwood, they know that, and that's okay. And they don't mind having to drive further to find a restaurant. Or, you know, you end up spending a lot more time in your car. And you can't go, my wife and I are big joggers, you know, and we love to live in Brentwood, but there's no sidewalk anywhere, and you'd be running down, like, the street. You'd be running in the street. Or we have kids. And to push your kid in a stroller, you're just going to be circling around in your yard inside your fence because there's nowhere to go. And so maybe that would work for us 15 years from now, when the kids move out of the house.
They never move out of the house.
They may never move out of the house.
They may move out.
When they move into the apartment in the back.
Lock the door.
But then the problem is, all right, so maybe it would work at that point. But then when we get 15 years older than that, we're probably going to want to downsize from that big yard. And so then where do we go? Well, our friends are in Brentwood, but Brentwood doesn't offer a smaller, no-yard option. And so do we have to leave Brentwood and leave all our friends? You know, that's a tough one. And so I understand where they're coming from. On one hand, everybody wants, you know, my plot of land, the American dream, stick your flag in it, and you know you're never going to lose that. But that comes at the expense of, you know, I joke and have fun with some of my friends who do live in Brentwood to say, hey, you know, where'd you go to eat last night? Well, all right, you can't say a chain. Tell me somewhere local. I'm like, oh man, that's a problem. You know, because we live in town, and so, you know, we do wish we had a little bigger yard. Honestly, that's our one biggest, but at the same time, we got sidewalks, and we can run a variety of places, and there are interesting restaurants everywhere. So there's no one right answer. It's a spectrum, it's a continuum, but I really feel like any good community is one that has all the options. I think people want the 1 acre lot, but you like in the same community to be able to have the other options too. So you have a little bit of everything. that's the one thing that I would disagree with Brentwood on, is I agree that people want cordoned off 1 acres, but have some other options too. That's the only thing I would say.
Thomas, in Lebanon, we have a SP zone. That's more of what you're looking at for developments like that. Is that, are you familiar with?
Yeah,
what we have?
SP works.
Is there something a little different or better that
Zoning is
to look at that would entice more things like this?
Zoning is very tricky. We came in, we had so much trouble getting this thing zoned in Franklin. And one of my partners, Phil Fawcett, I mean, God bless him, he's been working on dairy farms so finally we get everything zoned, and the result of the zoning is what you see there. That said, when you're zoning a master plan large development with a lot of conceptual buildings, that's your concept, but it's never going to end up exactly like that. You know, we may have, right here, we may have two-story, 50,000-foot buildings built. And like today, we have a user that wants, basically we'd like to combine those into one 100,000-foot building instead of the two 50s. We have a 65,000-foot user that would like to move from Brentwood to Franklin to anchor that building, and then we'll have 35,000 feet of extra space. Sounds great, right? I mean, that's the perfect type of user to kick off a new submarket. Well, the city's given us a hang-up in combining the two 50,000-foot buildings into one 100,000-foot building in the same lot. And there, even though it was written in the zoning that it was to be judged more on the massing of the zoning, the total of all this is, let's just say, 550,000 feet, and then the actual depiction is conceptual. We have to stick to the design standards. The actual sizes of each building and parking lot can ebb and flow. Well, nevertheless, we're coming back now, and we're having a hard time recombining all that stuff, and that makes it really, really hard. It makes it hard. It's hard enough to try to put deals together with these users to get them to come to a new market. You got to be able to represent, to back up what you're representing, that you can do to these guys. So it's you know, SP is when you're doing it and you know what you're building, and it's just a single site, and you're going to design it and then go. That works perfectly. Something like this, where you're doing a master plan ahead of time, but you need to leave flexibility to accommodate market users that come. If the SP can be designed to allow for flexibility, then that's perfect.
Well, that's what I think that we are on that.
That is the biggest thing. Of course, in designing for flexibility, you know, the citizens, the city, everybody has to be careful, of course, that in putting flexibility in there, it can't become something that you didn't intend. And so that's where the devil's in the details, but you don't want to have too many details that prevent the developer from being able to be flexible to chase users. So, you know, it's a little tricky.
Bobby, you have one, and then we'll.
Yeah, well, at least with Providence, you know, it failed 3 times before they finally got the money to take it down. Everybody raced to be second. His office the same way. Is your biggest challenge in putting together a center like this, the first user, the first one, and are those sales typically or rentals?
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. The biggest challenge is getting started. It's getting those first couple of users, and maybe the first single user isn't enough. Look back at Cool Springs, for example, and the ingredients that are in the soup for every locality are not always the same. So one group maybe has a bigger mall. Another group might have a good downtown, but it's maybe set back far off the interstate, or not, you know, lots of different ingredients. Proximity to industrial users that are already there, they're just not office users. Lots of different ingredients. So sometimes that first user is not enough, but the first user is always the hardest one. And then the second's a little easier, and then things start rolling downhill. In terms of the dangers of somebody losing it, or is it sales, or whatever, you know, there are very different types of, that comes back to the capital structure of the developer and how it's being put together. And in Cool Springs, for example, Cool Springs and Brentwood, very different. Brentwood, Maryland Farms. That went through several incarnations and failures. And that was not, it's hard to start off a new submarket when it is it's more of an option contract deal, and you're a developer, you're not trying to take ownership of it though, you're trying to map something out, find users to then come in or other investors to come in and each take pieces and parcels. That is susceptible to the whims of the market, and if your timing is not right and the market fluctuates, you can lose it. And the upfront cost to any of these new developments is an imposing milestone to crawl over for people, the infrastructure and horizontal development costs. So, to me, and maybe you can say I'm prejudiced because we are a long-term owner, okay? So that makes it easier, though, to kick off a new market. And so take like Cool Springs, J.P. Morgan was the money behind the buildings that turned into 1 corporate center and 2 corporate center and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And they didn't lose it. And they were the pioneers of that submarket. And the good part of that is if you're planning to own it for a long time, you have capitalized day one the money to hold it to year 20. And so if the economic cycle hits on the way down 2 years later and you didn't expect it, usually you can hold through. Because like if you go back to the Brentwood example, when you have the whole thing under contract and the person who kind of got a little of the way into it then loses it, you lose control of everything. Suddenly things are going through courts, and what you thought was a great master plan and people were going to build these really nice sidewalks and all that, next thing you know, you've got unintended uses in the middle of something because the developer lost control. So I'm biased, so it's hard for me to say what's better, what's worse, but the capital structure and nature of that developer is very important.
If it's a short question.
I'm just gonna mention that, Thomas, it looks like you used the area to have a greenway, or maybe it's a natural greenway, and in your capital, if you take it in perspective, Centennial Mall and the farmer's market are walking distance. Those are great assets, communities.
That's exactly
May
right.
have a greenway that you're wanting, you can build around.
We're investing more money intentionally in things like greenways and public spaces than ever before. Usually before, you would design the building and the parking lot, and then you see what you're left over with or what you can't develop. Now it's intentional, and that is actually the draw. And we're talking to a big user for an office building at Capitol View right now, and one of the things that really locked into him was we showed him a picture of the greenway with a bunch of, that's going to go right through the project, and a bunch of people on bikes hanging out at this trail marker. And turns out he's a big biker, and he's envisioning company biking teams once a week or whatever, going up and down this thing, walking right out of the office from a company camaraderie standpoint. That's what everybody wants these days, is they want a lot more than the office in their office space.
Thomas, thank you.
Pleasure.
We want this to be another part of your development in Wilson County,
We hope.
and your insights very beneficial.
We look forward to it.
Good. Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you.
We do appreciate Mr. McDaniel coming and sharing a lot of interest in this group as well. And we live in a good county. As a mayor, I'm excited about the white collar coming here, but we have the best, I believe, to offer in all worlds. And we thank you for your insight today. Is there any old business to come before this body? There is some new business here with the Tennessee Central Economic Alliance grant application, and do I turn it over to GC to you, or?
I'll do it with Charlie. Charlie and Tennessee Central has a grant program, and he is director of the Tennessee Central, formerly known as Four Lake, and we're getting that transition down. There's a grant program allowed for communities to go through their agency for economic development activities. During our final days of negotiation with Under Armour, we came to Mayor Haggerty and the Development Board put forth some money towards that project. We was also asked if there was any way the county could do anything else. We went to Four Lakes and had a discussion with them. This grant basically offsets the adequate facility tax of the county. Now, that's not an eligible fee or eligible budget, but we are working with Panettone. They have paid that fee. That frees up more of their money to go towards the road project or matching any of the ECD grants. So it does make the project eligible under Charlie's. What we're asking for you today is for your approval to submit this application for consideration under Tennessee Central. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Pleasure of the board, I hear a motion.
The executive committee did approve this in December, so it does require the full approval of the board.
So moved.
Got a motion by Ms. Benetta, second by anybody.
Second.
Second, Caleb. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Yes, sir, thank you for that. The only thing I bring to your attention is that last week, the Tennessee College of Applied Technology had a semi-open house for legislators. If you have an opportunity to go by there, see a very nice building, and we appreciate the Board of Regents and legislative delegation helping along those lines. The LPN class is ongoing. They have computers set up, IT will follow, mechatronics, maintenance, welding, diesel mechanics. I think we're well positioned as we begin to have some scholarship funds, and we need to push that down into our school system, and certainly we're trying to do some things, but just want to make you aware of that. I think it's a great step in the right direction. Mr. Mayor.
Anything else, anybody? Did I hear a motion to adjourn?
No.
And a second? All in favor say aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us.
Finally, we got, and I could tell you stories about what happened during those 8 years. I mean, that was just